All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another one of my interviews here on Drip Talk with Blake DeSnake Roberts. This is actually a part two of my interview with my guest that I have. I did an interview with him back possibly a year ago, but he is a former pro wrestler. He has wrestled for the companies WWF, WCW, WWE, ECW, OVW, NWA, and the list goes on and on. Also in Japan, AJPW. He's also the father of the current NXT WWE wrestler Brooks Jensen. And then he is also one-time WWF Tag Team Champion with the Godfather when he was known as the Good Father. He is no other than Bull Buchanan, also known as the Punisher and the Recon. So we're going to get him on in here, and then we will start.
Hey,
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for coming on here once again.
Oh yeah, no problem. No problem.
Yeah. All right, so I'll ask you my first question. So, when did you start doing wrestling, and what made you get into it as a whole?
Um, I started when I think I was 23 or 24, maybe. I just got out of college, but I was a fan from the time I was a little kid. I started watching it on TV. Fell in love with it. Some of my favorites were Tommy Rich wrestling too. Those guys, and then later on Von Erichs, the Freebirds. I grew up watching different types of wrestling, from different territories, whatever I could get. And, the magazines were big back then, so I would read those and, learn as much as I could. But, I just grew up loving it and just had to find a way to get into it. And I found some guys that were doing it here locally and got with them and, it all started for me.
Yeah, and I know you had a famous father as Larry Buchanan. He was more of like an actor. What was his reaction to you getting into wrestling?
Oh no! That's, my father was no. That's another. But I have been asked that before. But no, no. My dad was just he worked at a company down here and just normal guy. But he. I don't know if he really loved wrestling that as much as I did. I think he did it more just because I was into it. Um, he would take me to the matches. He would watch, with me on TV. But I think it was more just a thing of he was, glad to see I was, enjoying something. But we would go to the matches in Carrollton, Georgia Championship Wrestling. I think they run every other weekend or something. But we went to the matches. He'd take me not every week, but most of the time. We went about once a month. But yeah, he watched it with me, and so. Like I said, I don't know how much he was into it, or more is it just something that he knew that I enjoyed. But yeah, he always supported me with it.
Yeah. Who would you say is your favorite wrestler to watch now in the business besides your son?
Besides my son, uh, it's a lot of them, but I guess probably Randy Orton. Uh, I've watched him all the way from the very beginning. I was down there in OVW. I was making a second round through there after we got finished with the RTC thing, and we were off the road for about 6 months, I think. So I went down there, and him and Brock and Cena and Shelton, all those guys were down there. Dave, they were all down there. So I got to see it from the ground up, and just the way he's evolved as a performer and the character, just how smooth he is in the ring. I mean, he's just such a natural. So I really like him. I like Sheamus. I like the big guys. I like Sheamus. I like Drew McIntyre.
Yeah.
I love to watch him. Big fan of Gunter. Uh, I like to see the guys that hit hard. I've enjoyed his work for a long, long time. It's really cool because he was down there a few weeks ago, and Ben got to hang out with him, which was, like a dream come true for him too. But yeah, he's one of those guys. I like the style he works. Drew McIntyre. What a comeback story. Uh, so those guys, I guess.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, definitely Gunther with his chops. He's really with them chops. So,
Yeah.
hmm who were your wrestling trainers to get into the business and helped you start?
The guy that trained me was named James Hammonds. His wrestling name was Olin James, and he was a big guy. He was as big as I was. Close to 300 pounds, and he trained me. Got me started in the business. I went just like everybody else does. I just networked out. I started working for him at shows around here and met people at those shows that were working somewhere else. I got over toward Alabama, began working over there a lot. Met the Armstrongs over there. Met Ricky and Robert over there. Um, ran across with Michael Hayes over there. So I just continued to network, and but he's the one that got me in the business and started me training. He was trained by Ted Allen. A lot,
Oh yeah,
a lot of people know Ted Allen. He trained Ray Traylor and Scotty Riggs and a lot of other guys, Arn Anderson, but a lot of other guys also. A lot of local guys. So yeah, James trained me. Um, and there were a lot of people. If we'd be sitting here all day if you go through a list of people that have helped me in the business. I don't mean just a little bit of help. I mean a lot of help. Uh, but the Armstrongs at that time were Bob Armstrong was great. I think as he was to many people, he was almost like a father in the business. He was that guy you could go to and talk to, and he'd listen to you, and he'd help you out whenever he could. Uh, Tommy Rich was another. When I first got in the business, started riding with Tommy Rich, and I grew up a Tommy Rich fan. I was a huge Tommy Rich fan, and so getting to work with him, ride with him, hang out with him was just a dream come true. And hell, even at this point, it was all it was 24 hours a day. Me and Tommy, we drove to we'd leave Atlanta, we'd go to Knoxville, work Smoky Mountain, all through Kentucky. Me, him, Brad Armstrong got to ride and hang out with Brad Armstrong, Terry Gordy sometimes. Terry was on up the road in Chattanooga, but we'd go up Smoky Mountain. We'd pick him up along the way. And man, I mean, got to hang out with those guys. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. But there's so many people that help. Jim Cornette. I mean, I don't I don't know that I may not have got there eventually, but there's no way I would have got there as quickly or as well as I did without Jim Cornette. He was a kind of a mentor to me also down in Smoky Mountain. And even after that, he kept on helping me. He didn't just help me, when I got to Smoky Mountain. He kept helping me, you know, on up in WWE. So there's a lot of people.
yeah, of course. I mean, yeah, you probably can't stick it to one. Definitely with everyone that you went in the ring with, I'm guessing they helped you out as well. So
Yeah. Yeah, you learn something from everybody you get in the ring with, and that's the one of the there's always the little insider hacks. Well, that's one of the insider hacks to this business. You watch everybody. You never know where you're going to get something from. In the most unexpected places, you'll see some. In a crowd of 20 people, somebody will do something, and a spark will hit in your head, and who knows how much money it would make you. You never know where you're going to find something that you can use, and you take a little bit from everybody. But at the end of the day, you take things from people, but then you have to make it your own. You have to figure out how to use it, how to make it your style, how to make it your own. So it's not really copying somebody, but I guess it's more like using it for inspiration. Uh, I was a big Terry Gordy fan, and my style, I do a very poor imitation of Terry Gordy, but when I watch my matches, I can see, the things that I picked up from watching him, growing up watching him, and then getting to work with him, and things that he told me. Uh, so I got a lot from him. Later on, Booker T was a big, I mean, we were kind of the same generation, but he was a few years ahead of me. Booker T was a big inspiration.
Oops.
Had you there?
Yep. I don't know.
Oh,
Something happened on.
oh, yeah, but I got a lot from Booker T also, just because I thought that was the next kind of evolution of the big men. We were gonna have to stop just being on mat wrestlers and start going up on the ropes. So the scissor kick, of course, I got from him. I think he even did a leg drop off the top a few times, but got a lot from him. Um, Billy Gunn. I also like watching Billy Gunn at that time. There again, same generation, but he was a couple of years ahead of me. And I remember watching him in Florida, and I thought, God, for the guy to be as big as he is, he can. To Billy Gunn's credit, you never understand actually how big Billy Gunn actually is. And the reason you don't is because he works so well that you forget that he's a big man. Billy Gunn's 6'6", a solid 280, but he moves so well. He looks like he ought to be a cruiserweight. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so, and you don't realize how big he actually is till you stand next to him. But yeah, he was another guy that I watched, and I took a little bit from all of them and tried to kind of make it my own.
Yeah, of course. Who would you say has been the stiffest wrestler you have personally gone in the ring with in your career?
Uh, as much as I'd want to say Brooks Jensen, think I don't think I have to think about that for a minute. It'd definitely be in Japan, but a lot of the guys that some of the stuff was Masawa was known for his forearms, and our first night in, me and D'Lo, I tagged in and Masawa tagged in, and we locked up. And I figured I'd just go ahead and get this out of the way to start with, and just find out how how hard he actually hit. So I hit him with my own forearm, and he came back with one that, yeah, and I remember thinking to myself, well, shit, that didn't turn out well. He was no joke with those forearms, but I mean, on other stuff, he necessarily wasn't, what I call stiff. Um, just I did definitely be somebody over in Japan because that's just the style over there, and it's not anything being, being mean spirited or anything. That's just how you work. Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, yeah, probably one of the guys over there. But those guys were so smooth also that maybe they hit you with something pretty stiff. But for the most part, they're very easy to work with. I tell you what, Kabashi's clothesline. And it's and like again, it's not anything mean spirited. If he was going to hit me with it, I want him to hit me with it. And he looked at it the same way. If he was gonna beat me with it, it wasn't gonna look half-assed. He was gonna hit you with it, and that was our respect for you for for doing the favor for him. Uh, but yeah, some of those guys, I guess.
Yeah, because Japan has a different style than the US, and they're more of like the rougher style. So that's kind of what you have to expect when you're going to Japan.
Right, right, right.
Were you ever like a school or amateur wrestler as a kid?
No, unfortunately, we actually didn't have a wrestling team at my high school. I think until my senior year. And by that time, I'd played everything. I played baseball, I played football, but I really excelled at basketball. Uh, so by that time, I'd already had some colleges looking at me, and they said they were getting together a wrestling team. As much as I wanted to do it, I just couldn't turn down the chance of getting a scholarship or something, which I did. I wound up going to Grange College for about a year, and then I transferred over to Southern Union. It was a junior college, I played there for another 2 years. But yeah, I would love to have, and I believe that amateur wrestlers, make great pro wrestlers because at the end of the day, like Vince McMahon always said, it says as much as sometimes he got away from that. One of his sayings was, it says wrestling on the marquee outside. So at the, they already have a leg up on the actual wrestling, and that's what a match should always somewhat boil down to. I think is wrestling. I mean, not every match can be an amateur wrestling match, but you have to have wrestlers. You have to have the David Richards. You have to have the Benoits. You have to have the Guerreros. You have to have those guys that can go out there and really go and can go back to an amateur background when they need to.
Yeah, and for like a good example, like some of them you listed, but also like Kurt Angle, he is one of like the best, I would say, in my opinion, like one of the best Olympic wrestlers from.
Definitely. Definitely, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, my son, Brooks Jensen, he was a very good amateur wrestler. He started young and excelled. And his senior year, he won the heavyweight championship over here in Alabama. So, he was a state champion, and I think that helped him in the business. Now, once you get down there to NXT, that's one of the things he told me when he called home. He was down there with Brutus and the Creed brothers, and those guys were all Americans but when you have the amateur background, you usually have good footwork. Um, and a lot of the stuff we do, it's all based on amateur wrestling. So it just gives you that. To me, it gives you a great foundation.
yep. What would you consider to be a weakness and then a strength of yours personally in wrestling?
Uh, well, my weakness, I know exactly what my one of my weaknesses was. I'm sure I had many, but but the one glaring one to me was this business it's about self promotion. You know, there's no fading into the background. You have to be the brightest, the brightest star in the galaxy. You have to stand out from everybody else. When everybody's standing in the line, you have to step forward. You have to separate yourself from everybody else. I never focused on self promotion as much as I did, and people are, a lot of people probably say, "Well, God, you did a horrible job at it," but I always thought the match was more important. I always tried to think about how the match would entertain people. If that meant me spending more time on my back than on my front, then that's what I thought my job as a wrestler, as an entertainer was supposed to be. I had a lot of people that went to bat for me. I had a lot of people that liked me, and I always tried to, for me it was very simple. Show up, work on time, show up, like you would a regular job. Show up on time, uh, ready to work, do what you're told, not ask a lot of questions. In other words, everything that you shouldn't do in pro wrestling. But that's that's just how I was raised. And
Hmm.
do I regret it? No, not at all, because that's just what I believe. But yeah, my weakness is not, I guess, not patting myself on the back a little more maybe than I should. My wife tells me all the time I'm too nice. Uh, but yeah, I mean, to me, I always thought the match was a little more important than me getting myself over, and that is not the way to think. I mean, I hate to say that, but it's reality. Uh, and as much as and I know my son is kind of the same way, but I've tried to tell him, you kind of have to put your Brickhouse Brown. We were in Memphis. It's when we first got down there. It was me, Bart Sawyer, and Dwayne Johnson. We were in his car. He had a little Pathfinder, and we were coming from Louisville. So it was like a 9-hour trip up there and a 9-hour trip back. It was horrible. But we were on our way back, and Brickhouse Brown was sitting back there. And Brick, we're all young. We're all 25-ish,
Yeah.
and all just getting into business. And Brickhouse was just dropping knowledge on us. And he said one thing. He said, and it made so much sense. But like I said, I'm sorry I didn't take his advice better than I did. But he said to work on top, you have to be a little selfish. And I didn't really understand what he meant at first, but I understand now. You have to be able to get yourself over. You have to be able to get yourself over with. You have to be able to put yourself in positions to get yourself over with the fans. That's what it's all about. The office liking you is a great thing, but as long as those fans like you, the office will put up with a lot as long as you're putting people in seats. So getting over the fans, and sometimes that means taking a little more than maybe you wanted to. There was times up there. I remember working Al Snow. I had got to know Al Snow and Smoky Mountain, and was just amazed at his wrestling knowledge for a guy that was, really wasn't that old, wasn't that much older than me. Just his knowledge about the sport, the business, the history, the everything. Well, fast forward, we're both up there, and I think it's even when him and Steve Blackman were doing the head cheese thing, they wanted me to beat him and beat him pretty quick, and I just was like, damn, I didn't know how to, I really had a hard time doing that because this guy
Yeah.
could work circles around me, and did, and did, did what they asked and laid down and did a great job at it and made me look like $1 million. But it was just hard for me to, to do that. And in this business, you can't be like that.
Yeah, of course. So, what was it like for like the traveling part of wrestling for you? And did you like that, or did you not like the traveling? And is there any funny or interesting stories from like traveling with what you would call like the boys backstage?
Uh, yeah, I love the traveling. Actually, a lot of guys didn't, but hell, I just I enjoyed it. I'm a kid from a small town in Georgia. I went places I never thought I'd go to see. All Italy, England, France, Germany. Japan. I wrestled in every state in the continental United States and Puerto Rico, Mexico. I mean, who gets to do that kind of stuff? Very few people in life you get to do anything like that, especially doing something that you enjoy doing. So I enjoyed the traveling. Of course, I didn't like being away from my family, but I was very lucky. When I first got to WWE, we were on the road sometimes, 15, 20 days at a time. Excuse me. And, we'd come home for a day or two and then we'd be gone again. But when I was still there the whole time, but when I was off the road and I came back, they had changed the schedule. So, we would fly out on Saturday morning. We'd do a house show on Saturday. We'd do a house show on Sunday or pay-per-view. And then we do Monday Night Raw on Monday, and then we do SmackDown on Tuesday. Because then it was
Wow.
still a taped show. And then we would have, you fly home Wednesday morning, so you'd have Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday off. And I mean, that was, great to me because it was the best of both worlds. You got to go out and enjoy your time with your friends and everything. And then you had time home with your family.
Yeah. So, out of all the names you have wrestled under, which one was your favorite? Like Bull Buchanan, B2, Lord Humongous, the Punisher, Recon, or Stud?
Well, the one that struck my ego the most was Stud, of course. Easy. That was Paul E's idea.
Oh,
I just
really?
think yeah, he didn't know anything else to call me, so it was kind of last minute. Um, Me and Joel Deaton had went. I'm sorry. He had wanted Joel Deaton and Billy Black, a friend of mine. They were tag team over Japan, but Joel wasn't available, so I went up there with Billy. So I was kind of a sub, a last minute sub. So he's like, but like I said, stroked my ego, a little bit. He looked at me and said, "Stud," and I was like, "The hell, that works for me." The Punisher was great because I was a comic book fan somewhat. I wasn't that into him, but I liked the Punisher magazine, and I was a fan of the movie. The Recon, that was kind of my ideal. Once they told us what we were doing, the Truth Commission, we had to come up with our own. Let us come up with our own names, and I was trying to think of something because out of the Kurgan was the big guy, Tank, the other guy. So I was trying to think of something, a little more high flying. So Recon was the idea. But I guess the one that kind of means the most would be Bull Buchanan. That's kind of the one that kind of stuck for the longest.
Yeah, of course, because that's what most people know you under the most, too.
Yeah, yeah. Hold on, Walt. Hold on a second. Okay.
All right. So, during your ECW run, do you wish you could have done more in the ECW longer? Because I know you didn't really do much. You had only a couple matches here and there.
It was just a one weekend thing. Yeah, well, the reason I didn't, Paul Lee liked us and was going to bring us back, but the reason I didn't was because while I was at home waiting to go back, I got a contract in the mail from WWE. But I did have to think about it because I knew that I could go to. I thought I could go to ECW and make a name for myself. Before I went to WWE. I mean, it's with a little more credibility. But at the same time, it was WWE. I mean, how do you really turn that down?
Yeah.
It's always the top game in town. So there's really no way that I could turn that down.
Yeah, I don't think anybody would probably turn a WWE contract down. So, yeah. So, what were the differences you personally saw between the locker rooms and backstage from ECW, FWCW, and then WWE? Were and
Well, every locker room is different. The WWE locker room was more, I guess more guys. The guys were making lots of money, so things were a little more. I don't know. We started out comparing watches. Who had the nicest watch, and then it went to which was better, Cadillac or Ford, stuff like that. And then it was houses. Somebody built a 6-bedroom house. So somebody else built a 10-bedroom house. And ECW was more about honestly, it was more about the what they were doing out there, and then the kind of partying back, which wasn't anything wrong with that either. But the locker rooms, I always fit into the locker rooms pretty well for the most part. I didn't ever really have any problems backstage with anybody. I always got along with folks. So, the locker room's pretty good for me. I did see some pretty good ribs. Tommy Rich, Tommy Rich, and I don't know I don't know if Brad was in on it or not. I was some quasi in on it because I was just kind of there. But Tom Pritchard just got a new bag and it had a lock on it. And somehow Tommy locked it to the pipe over the thing, and I everybody done with key. But I remember Dr. Tom being pretty hot about it. I think they finally got it down for him, but yeah, I heard some of those ribs in the earlier years could be really stiff.
Yeah, definitely. From as long as you were there, you probably seen all different stuff happen backstage and different things of the sorts.
Yeah. Well, I was there in Montreal too. When that happened, me and Kurgan, we were unwilling participants in the whole thing in Montreal. We were there. We were on the show, the Survivor Series, and we of course stayed to watch the main event. A lot of people had left, but a lot of the backstage folks, and some of them had left. But we stayed to watch the main event, and we were sitting right there. And when we saw it happen, we both it took a minute for it to set in, like what had really just happened. And we both looked at each other and said, let's grab our bags and head out. So we went to do that. And as we were coming out of the dressing room, Jerry Briscoe come in and said, "Hey, you guys stay in here and just stay in here." So go back down. Sean and Hunter came in, and then Brett came in, and then of course when Brett came in, the cameras came in with him, and it's all on that documentary. It was all happened just like that. I was sitting right across from it when it all went down, and then I think what they didn't show on camera was Undertaker came in and spoke to Brett for a second. Brett was taking off his boots, and Taker asked where Vince was, and I think they said he was in his office, and Taker said, "Well, he needs to come down here." And it was just a few minutes later, Vince came in, Shane came in. I don't think they all. Pat was there, Jerry. All the office guys. A lot of the office guys was with it. And
Yeah,
Undertaker, said, "Hey guys, let's give him a little," because by that time, the whole locker room was in there. Everybody was kind of in there standing around, kind of waiting to see what was going on. And Taker said, "Hey, let's give him some space," and we all got out of there as quick as we could. And then, yeah.
wow, yeah, interesting. So, who made the decision to put you in the faction, the Truth Commission, and who came up with the name, the Recon, for you?
Um, Bret Hart was over in South Africa filming a Sinbad episode, I think, and he met an actor over there named Robin Smith, and they somehow came up with this ideal of the Truth Commission. It was it was a a legitimate South African group. They were installed to investigate all the atrocities during apartheid. Well, the wrinkle was, that the people that installed them were the people that, had committed the atrocities in apartheid. So, it was corrupt. So that was the whole idea. We were a bunch of, jerks from South Africa, but we were a military group. And so Robin had actually been in the South African military. So he taught us all how to march and everything. And but it was kind of Brett's ideal. Brett and went back and pitched it to Vince, and Vince liked it. So the Truth Commission was born. I got in it. Kurgan, uh, Kurgan had already been wrestling up in Canada for a couple of years, I think, and he knew Brett. So Brett, of course, pulled him in. Guys like 7 foot and ripped, didn't shape. And I think Mike Hallett was Tank. Owen Hart had met him over in Germany, worked with him over in Germany, and Owen said, "Hey, he was Mantar, formerly in WWE, so he'd already been there once. So he said, hey, Mike's over there in Germany working. Hell, why don't we get him?" So they got him, and then from what I understand, from what Robin told me, Brett was kind of looking through some of the pictures of some of the guys that were available, in the company at that time, and saw me, and I had the crew cut, and he said, "Well, he looks like a military guy, so let's use him." And so once we got together, we had to come up with names, and I, that's the name I came up with. I thought I was thinking because I had a friend that was in the Marine Corps, and I remember him telling me when he got in, he wanted to go into the Marine Recon. So that's where I came up with Recon at. I remembered that, and I thought it sounded cool. So
Nice. Yeah. Interesting. Would you ever possibly like do a reunion at like a convention or like a signing with the Truth Commission with the remaining um, wrestlers from the group? If that would.
absolutely, absolutely, I'd love to. I would love to. I hadn't seen Robert Kurgan in a long time. I've talked to him on the phone, but I ain't seen him in God forever. Mike, God rest his soul. He passed. God, I don't know if it was a year ago or maybe 6-8 months ago. Luke Poirier was Sniper. I haven't seen him in years and years. I'd love to see him. He was such a good worker, such a smooth. He came in later. He came in when we actually debuted. Mike never debuted with us. Mike was down in Memphis with us and wrestled his Tank. I think we did. Yes, he did. We did a Shotgun Saturday night. You can find it on YouTube, and he was there as Tank. But the next time we came up, they replaced him with Luke Poirier, who had been Rambo over in Germany for Otto. He had worked over there for a long time, so they brought him in as Sniper. But it's been a long time. And Don Callis, I haven't talked to him in a while. Who came in later as the Jackal. Robin Smith, we've talked some on the phone over the last few years, and I kind of keep up with him on Facebook. But I'd love to see those guys again. Yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah, I think all of, like the fans would go crazy if they seen like something at like a convention that said the Truth Commission would be reuniting. So yeah, but
Well,
like
maybe 15 or 20 people would go crazy. I don't know. Maybe 30 or 40 we could get there. But yeah, no, it would be fun. Yes, it would.
yeah, because Kurgan doesn't really do much, same as Luck, and not you really don't do like much like conventions or signings. So yeah,
no, I don't really. I don't. But I
yeah.
am, and I'm really looking forward to it. I am doing the one in Charlotte this year, the Gathering. I think it's August or
Ooh,
September.
yeah.
I am doing that one, and I'm really looking forward to it. Going up and doing that one, seeing some of those guys.
Yeah, that's gonna be nice. I've seen some guests that they have. They have like rare and pretty good guests, so that's gonna be a
Yeah,
good show.
yeah.
So, did you prefer the USWA or the WWF version of the Truth Commission?
Yeah, I don't know. The original was me, Kurgan, and Mike Tank, and Robin Smith, the Commandant. So I thought that version was more kind of true to and a lot of it was because of Robin. But I thought that was more true to the original concept. The South African military group. We marched to the ring. We did the salute. Robin had the accent. And he was an actual soldier at one time, so he had. It was all second nature to him, and he could talk. He could talk, but because he was an actor over in South Africa, but he didn't know anything about wrestling, so he was learning all this stuff about wrestling on the fly. He was jumping out of the movie industry world into the wrestling world. And while there are a lot of similarities, there are also a lot of differences. So, he was kind of fighting an uphill battle from the beginning. But then once, and it would kind of transition because, we got there and then Luke joined us. And not long after that, Robin had visa trouble and had to leave. So Don Callis came in, and once Don came in, that's when we turned a little more toward what we kind of ended up with, which was the kind of the cult leader and the mindless followers, which was us.
Yeah.
And I really liked that. I didn't. When he first came in, they tried to pass it off as like, oh, he's not the commandant, but he's the jackal. He was a spy of the group or some BS like that. And Don right off, he knew that wasn't gonna, that wasn't gonna work. So with a lot of his influence, we talked about everything as a group because that was what was so much fun to me about it. We traveled as a group. We traveled. We flew. We rode in vans. We hung out together. We went to eat together at night. We were a group. We didn't all split off and go separate ways. So we all talked about it, and we kind of headed down that path. So say a favorite, I don't know. To me, they were kind of two whole different things. Once once Don got there, it went down the other way. And I honestly thought that I didn't know how long that because you got to think about what time it was. It was 1997. Austin was white hot. Rocky was getting white hot. The whole DX thing. Everything was anti-establishment, and we were an old school establishment gimmick as the troops command. The soldiers from South Africa. And everything was turning newer and edgier, and the whole cult thing I thought had some legs under it. Actually, especially the way that Don was going with it. He was going down the David Koresh kind of that rabbit hole, and that was still fresh on people's minds. I really thought it had some legs under it, but it
Yeah. What about what was like the background and story, and who made the decision to put you in the faction, the Right to Censor, this time, and how did that all come about?
Well, I'd broken off from Boss Man, and I was doing single stuff. I did the thing where I stole Undertaker's motorcycle and worked with Jericho on TV. And Stevie Richards, who I'd gotten to be friends with, saw me backstage in Albany, New York, and laid the whole thing on me. I'd seen I'd seen him come out in the shirt, but I most of the time back then, unless you really knew somebody, you didn't really go in depth on what they were doing or what their plans were. You just kind of there again, you kind of kept it to yourself. But I thought he was doing something maybe like a Mormon kind of thing. And, he explained it to me what it was. It was a dig at the Parent Teacher Council, and so I knew it was going to get some heat. I mean, we all knew it was going to get heat just from the stuff that we were, just from that god awful, siren going off was enough to get plenty of heat. But then, when you start, you take away the Godfather's girls, you turn Val, the Ivory goes with us, we start messing with China, right when our Playboy thing came out and was going strong. I mean, when you start taking away all the fun things on the show, of course you're gonna get a lot of heat. We did. But honestly, I don't know who's who's. I'm sure at the end of the day it was Vince's call. Vince always saw me as a killer. He always saw me as the muscle, the killer guy, which I totally enjoyed being. But I tried to kind of base the character off of an old Southern Baptist preacher. That's the way I kind of thought of it. I was raised up in church, and it was kind of easy character to play.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I definitely liked that whole faction. Definitely how you guys work as heels. You guys did great at what you guys did. So, what was your reaction when you got asked to wrestle and work for ECW, which was like your first WWE company you got to work for?
Oh, I was totally excited. Billy, like I said, Billy got in touch with me and asked me if I wanted to go, and I said sure. But at the same time, like I said, Jim Cornette was kind of a mentor to me uh, in the business, and it was at that time that the whole thing, I guess, with New Jack had left or something. A few weeks before he said he would. I don't remember the whole thing, but him and Paulie had a little bit of heat at the time. I think they've squashed it now. But I called Jimmy and I just want to make. I said, hey, this ain't gonna get me no heat with you, is it? And he said, absolutely not. Go up there and show them what you can do. Uh, hope they use you well. So I went up there and Paulie was impressed with me. He was impressed with my size. Like I said, I don't pat myself on the back much, but I had some. I was pretty athletic for a guy my size. And when I went, I pulled out every big move. I did an elbow drop off the top that would rival, uh, some of the best. I just pulled out every athletic move I could, and he was impressed by it. So, you know, the thing I remember other than just the atmosphere in the ECW arena, when people talk about it, man, it ain't no joke, and they're not exaggerating. That place it was electric. Uh,
Yeah.
the adrenaline rush from that crowd, and even coming in, we were nobodies, especially the ECW crowd. I mean, Billy, the tape traders, you got to think this was like, early 90s, mid 90s. The tape traders were going strong at that time. So Billy, and a lot of the ECW fans were into the tape trading. So they knew what was going on. They knew the All Japan and they knew New Japan. They knew Frontier. They knew all that, UWF. So Billy Black they a lot of the smart fans knew who Billy Black was, but they didn't have a clue who I was. I think some of them finally put it together that, oh, that's the Punisher from, Smoky Mountain, from some of the real
Yeah.
hardcore. But we came in as nobodies working, the Eliminators who kind of who were working on top of the tag team division at that time. And, um, they gave us a good match. They were very generous with us. Of course, we put them over, but they were very generous with us. They let us do our stuff and let us, shine and give us a good shot. Looking good for Paul Lee. And and I remember going, the old round motel there. I think it was the Travel Lodge, where everybody stayed, and it was it was a party. I mean, it was a damn throwdown all night. We stayed up till 3 o'clock in the morning cutting promos for the next show. We were in one of the hotel rooms there, and guys would come in and come out, and everybody was doing their everybody had you had 30 guys that had to get promos, and some of them you might have to do once or twice, or they might have. So it's an extended thing. So by guys were just hanging around, and there was a lot of party favors floating around, and just hanging out and watch the other guys do their promos, And for somebody like me, sit there and listen to Raven, uh, Terry Funk, guys like that cut promos. That was uh, a lifetime experience for me. So, and Shane,
Yeah.
all those promo guys, I got to sit there and watch them cut their promos, and ask them about it afterwards because they were all so cool. So, yeah, man, it was a great experience. I would have loved to have stayed, and if that envelope had never come in the mail, I would have still been, I would have stayed. I would have, I would have kept working there. But at that time, I couldn't turn that down.
Yeah, of course. And also, yeah, so like you mentioned, you got the envelope from WWE to work. Uh, what was your whole reaction to that when you got that envelope saying that you were going to work for the bigger promotion?
Uh, Ecstatic. uh, I don't think I slept that night. Of course, I was excited. I mean, you go from zero to hero in 3 seconds. I actually, I knew it was coming. Cornette called me and told me. I'd been home about a week from ECW, and Cornette called me, and I saw his number, and I picked up, said, "Hey, Jimmy," and he told me, he said, I got you a contract. You'll be headed down to Memphis." And that's what I did. I went down to, once I got the contract signed. And back then you went up and met Vince personally. You went up they flew you up to Stanford. J.J. Dillon was the head of talent at that time. It was even before JR took over. So he gave you the tour around the building. You went everywhere, met everybody, and then you came in, you finally met Vince. And so you sat down there with Vince, talked about, your ideals and his ideals. And of course, at that point, I had no ideals. I was open to any ideals. I mean, I didn't know, who I was or what I was. I got there
Yeah.
I got there so quick for back then, especially. Now it's not. My son Brooks Jensen, he signed with him when he was 19. He literally had just graduated, and he went and had a tryout with him. Back then you had to be in the business for a while. Because it's like anything else. Back then, racing, football, anything, you had to put in some time before you got those top spots. And I'd only been in like 4 years at the most. I think like 3.5. So I got there quick, and I just I couldn't believe it that here I am. I'm in the top company, irregardless of what I'm doing, or who I'm doing it with, or anything. There was a contract that said I was a paid employee with the WWE. I had made it to the top of the business.
Yeah,
Now,
of course.
I had not made it at all in the business yet, which I later learned. But as far as, and I still have that envelope. I still have it. I still have my original contract because,
Oh,
it was like signing a contract, in an NFL or signing a contract in Major League Baseball. You're at the top of your business.
yep, of course. That is something that you probably would want to keep as for yourself for quite some time. So,
Yeah.
did you? What was Vince McMahon like towards you during the time there? And did you ever get to like meet and see like Linda McMahon? And otherwise, what was she like then? If you've ever got to meet with her?
They were all great. They were all great. The first thing that struck me with Vince was how big he actually was. Vince is a big guy. Vince is, 6'2", 6'3", and Jack. And so, but I remember sitting down with him, and we talked a little bit, and he asked me, he said, "Well, what do you see yourself doing here?" And I told him, I said, "Mr. McMahon, I'll do whatever you want me to do." And he laughed, and he said, "Well, I appreciate that, but we got to figure out, what you want, who you are." And there again, years later, I really understood more of what he was saying than I did at the time. In this business, you have to figure out who you are and what you are, and your style and everything. But um, they were all nice. When I first got there, the Truth Commission was kind of like, I heard JR put it a great way one time. He said, it was like a sip of coffee. I was there for a minute, but when I went back the second time, I was more there, So,
Yeah.
and at that time, I actually had a really good relationship with Vince. I could go into the office and talk to him, and I didn't have to make an appointment or anything like that, just a simple go to the door and knock and stick your head in. And I learned that from Ray Traylor from Big Boss Man. Vince loved Ray Traylor. Everybody loved Ray. You'll never find anybody that'll say a bad word about Ray Traylor. But Vince really loved Ray Traylor because he was so down to earth. And Vince likes people that are down to earth. um, he likes people that are real. And that's why he liked Ray. So, yeah, I had a really good, and I met Linda many times. Shane was working there, and Shane was almost he was kind of like one of the boys because he would hang out with us. Him and Billy Gunn were always going outside to race, see who was fastest or who could jump the highest. Shane was cool. I mean, he was a lot of fun to be around. At that time, I would bring my wife and my daughters up and they would disappear. Stephanie would take them and go to the box where all we had souvenirs, and load them up on souvenirs, stuff like that. They were really great. They were really great, and um, I always knew who my boss was. At the end of the day, there was never any question of who my boss was, and that was Vince McMahon, and I liked it that way. Uh, I don't like the idea of having to go through multiple people to get a message to somebody that might tell the boss. I always liked going, straight to the boss, and that's what I always liked about Vince. There was never any doubt of all the people that were around him and all the people that helped him and everything. You knew who made the final decision on everything.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. How would you say like the wrestlers and workers treated you in the WWE?
Oh, great! Because most of them I was already fans with, or already friends with. Sorry, well, I was fans of them too, but a lot of them are always friends with. But I really got to be close with. I got really got to be close with Bradshaw and Ron Simmons. Rode with them a lot when I wasn't riding with Ray got me and Godfather got to be good friends. Me and Teddy Long and Godfather rode together. We were riding partners, and of course, me and Ray were riding partners. Traveled a lot with Chris Benoit. Traveled with him. Traveled with later on. It was me and Devon Dudley. Me and Devon Dudley traveled a lot after they broke him and Bubba up there. I guess around 2002 or so. Shelton Benjamin later on, right there, kind of toward the end. Me and Shelton were riding together. So I had a lot of friends, and everybody was. I never had a problem with anybody up there. Even people. It's not a anything. It's not common knowledge. People talk about how Shawn Michaels was back in the day, but Shawn Michaels was always a gentleman to me. I mean, he never said anything out of. But now, of course, I wasn't working Shawn Michaels for the world title either. But Shawn always was always said hey, and several times took time to watch my match and tell me, hey, do this and maybe not. So, I got along with everybody up there. I never had a problem with anybody. Maybe it's my personality, but yeah, just I had a lot of friends, and a lot of guys that I work with, still friends to this day.
Yeah. Who are like some of like a little list of some of the wrestlers that you still get in contact with this to this day?
Me and Matt Bloom, of course, he's over or the head coach down at NXT now. So I get to talk to him every now and then. I saw Shelton down there a while back, so me and him still talk a little bit. Once in a while I talk to Godfather, Teddy Long, see him somewhere and talk to those guys. Yeah, just kind of when you run across them, or you might see them pop up on Facebook, something like that. Me and D'Lo still talk. Me and D'Lo got to be great. We were tag team partners for a long time. Got to be great friends. We met each other in Smoky Mountain, and our career paths paralleled each other from Smoky Mountain all the way kind of to the end, basically. We went Smoky Mountain together. We came up to WWE about the same time, worked there. We left there about the same time, went over to Japan. We tagged over there for the most part. I mean, for at least 4 or 5 years exclusively, just me and him. When we were in All Japan, sometimes we were tagged with other people. It was usually me and him tagging. And then when we went to Noah, we were brought in as a tag team. So, yeah, still talk to him. Some other guys, that some of the mainstream fans might not, like Taokea, Monokea Mossman. He was a All Japan star through the '90s and on through 2000s. We were partners with him over there, so I still keep in touch with him a lot. And there's tons of local guys that I talk to, all the time. But yeah, some of those guys.
Yeah, of course. And it's good to keep up with them and see how they're doing, you know.
Yeah.
Who is one wrestler you never got to get into the ring with that you wished you could have in the WWE? Even though you probably had matches with almost everyone, but
Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair.
oh yeah. Yep.
I just missed. Hogan came back while I was there, and I was glad. Looking back on it, man, it was just something to be there. I remember going to, and it was like that everywhere, of course. But I remember we were at a house show in Asheville, North Carolina, and it was sold out completely. And it was right after Hogan had come back, and he went out in the yellow and the red. Big Boss Man told me one time that him and Hogan were working out in Seattle, and they were at the old, I think it was the old Tacoma Dome. The dome was made out of wood, and Ray said that the pop from the sound from the crowd was so loud that actually the ring felt like it was moving under his feet. I was standing backstage that night when Hogan went out, and the place literally shook.
Wow.
It was something it was amazing to see that kind of reaction from people, and especially he just come back. He just it was right after the whole NWO thing, and him and Rocky at Toronto, and now he was back to the yellow and red. So that and Flair, I would love to have been able to get in the ring with either one of those guys. There's tons of guys, that I would love to, hell, I would love to have gotten to wrestle Luthez, just all the guys through history. But the two that I could have potentially gotten the ring with that I didn't would probably be those two.
Yeah. I mean, you could never say never with Ric Flair. He's always here and
Yeah,
there saying that he wants one more match. He doesn't
there's
want one
always a
more.
chance for Flair. Yeah,
Yeah. He can't make up his mind. And he's in
yeah,
AEW, so
yeah.
yeah.
And I'd take it if he offered it right now.
Yeah.
I'd
And then
still
you get
take
to
it.
say that
Yes,
yeah, then you get to say that you've had a match with Ric Flair. So
yes.
even though he almost basically had a heart attack in his retirement match.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But
Yeah.
yeah, he's still plugging along. Thank God.
Yeah. Who are some of like the wrestlers you would say you got along with and hung out with the most during WWE backstage?
Well, like I said, when we were Truth Commission, we were all hanging out together. But me and Bradshaw had already got to be kind of friends, and I knew Ron. So once I got with Ray, me and Ray were traveling together, and sometimes, we would me and Ray, uh, Chris Benoit and Ray were good friends. So sometimes we would travel together. And like I said, I would travel with Ron and John a lot, and then started traveling with Godfather and Teddy, and later on with Devon and Shelton. So, but usually sometimes you jump in with it just kind of depending on where you were and what Uh, I remember being at the a few times me and I rode some with Jesse Road Dog. We rode together because we'd known each other forever. All the way back to the Indies in Georgia. So there were times we'd ride together, and but yeah, it was uh, there was always somebody to jump in the car with. Nobody was going to leave you stranded. It was a I don't know. It was camaraderie. Everybody was still look. You had to look out for yourself, but you know, you had friends and you had guys that you could talk about the business with. once you started riding with somebody, usually you got a little more comfortable with them, and you start talking a little more business with them.
Yeah, of course. So, if you got asked now in your career to come back to the WWE and do like one more match, one more run, a Royal Rumble, a Legends Night, or storyline with your son, a training at the PC, or anything, would you take up that offer?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, I would. Uh, Especially with with my son. Um, I came down and did a little guest coaching thing with him, and that was great. I got to meet a lot of those guys. Got to, I think, a lot of the guys that they're just getting TV now. We're just getting started down there. They were in Robbie's class down there. Uh, yeah, I would love to. And actually, I was just down there this weekend. I was at the PC. Got to watch one of my son's matches at the PC. So and got to see everybody for a little while down there. So yeah, absolutely, I would. Anything I could do and I got another son coming along too. My youngest son Zach. I think he's in Rome, Georgia this weekend. He's he's on hitting. He just graduated last week. Took a spring break or a
Your sound is. Oh, there we go.
Hey, yeah. Hey, I'm gonna have to jump off here if it's cool with you. I got a phone call I gotta take.
All right. Yeah.
Is that okay? I can stay a little longer if you need me to. I can call him back. I'll
I
stay a
mean,
little longer.
all right. So, so I know that you were just mentioning that you were at like the bar and did some stuff. Would you ever, or have you ever, like been on TV or like I know they have like the new Next Generation show. Have they ever like scouted you out to do that as like a trainer? Or...
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. Like I say, I've been down there a couple of times as guest coach and done that, and that was lots of fun. But yeah, I mean, yeah, anytime you get to work with the number one company, of course you're going to take that opportunity, whatever it is. Um, I don't know how much I could do in the ring anymore, so I think I think that day's already passed. But yeah, backstage, anything like that, of course.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Where and what do you see your son being and doing, Brooks Jensen, in like the next 10 to 15 years?
Oh well, I think he'll get a shot at the main roster. Um, I think they're you know trying to come up with a good idea, something that's going to stick for him. I think he'll get up to the main roster. I mean, it's kind of all on him. I would love to. I would love to say that 10, 15 years from now he'll be kind of having the kind of run that Randy Orton is, but that's totally up to him. Uh, you, as much as you love to help him as much as you can as a father or as a coach. Either one. Uh, you want to get them as far as you can, but ultimately it's up to them. It's just how far they can take themselves. Um, but I mean, the kid's 22 years old. I mean, he's a prodigy, and it's not just in the ring. I mean, he knows the business. He knows the history of the business. He's a student of the game. Um, so and I've tried to impress on him that once your days in the ring are over, you can still be an asset to the company, more in a backstage role. And that's another thing that I wish I had kind of thought about a little more when I had the chance was, maybe once the in-ring stuff was done, transitioning into a backstage role. Uh, but what I really always wanted to do was coach. I mean, I've always enjoyed coaching. So, I've got a training school I've just started. We got promotion. We just started Bullpen Pro Wrestling. Um, so that's what I enjoy is coaching. I like to be in the ring with them and, teaching them, the basics.
Yeah. So something that I would possibly like seeing is like a feud with like Brooks Jensen and Braun Breaker on like the main roster. But with that, I know that like Rick Steiner has appeared once when Braun Breaker won the title on NXT. But I would like during a feud with Brooks and Braun, like something where you and Rick come out in like the middle of the feud and do something, and then it'd be like a father and son versus father and son match. I think that would be honestly pretty cool to see.
It would be cool. I don't know how great it would be to see. I mean, I think me and Rick are kind of past the point. We might get in there on our walkers and hit each other with our canes or something. But me and Steiner are friends. So yeah, I don't know how much we could do in the ring, but yeah, it'd be great to see them two go. And they actually they did the tryout at the same time. They both tried out and basically both hired in at the same time. Started at the same time. So, I always think it's cool. Guys, I started with a guy named Bulldog Reigns. His real name is Scott McCulley. He wrestled in the mid '90s. A lot of people that watched wrestling, Music City, Memphis wrestling. He wrestled in Memphis a lot as I can't remember if it was Big Bowler Duke or if it was I think it was Bulldog Reigns. He wrestled down in Puerto Rico. It was just a great work. He was a fire plug. He's 5'6", 5'7", but he was, jacked 280. And I always think it's cool, to watch guys careers parallel each other and, the guys that you start with, where you end up. So yeah, that would be real cool.
Yeah. So what about if you got a call from AEW to become signed? Because they always like sign the legends and Hall of Famers and stuff as like a wrestler, a manager, just a trainer, or anything of the sort. Would you take up an AEW offer?
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, I guess I would. I mean, money's money. You have to look at it. Like I said, this is a business. Yeah, and man, I'm pulling for AEW. I hope they continue because we need an alternative. The best time in pro wrestling was when the thing that made the Attitude Era was the rivalry between WCW and WWF. I mean, it all started there. The whole Attitude part was the fact that both companies had come out and publicly said, Bischoff had come out and told what our tapings, who was going to win that night on Raw. I mean, that's what made it the Attitude Era. So it was competition. Uh, do I ever want to see WWE go away or get beat? No, absolutely not. But would I love to see that same kind of rivalry? Maybe not quite as uh, maybe not quite as having the gloves off as much as ours was, but a rivalry, yeah, absolutely. I wish there was another company that would rival them. But I think right now, to me, it's a great time to be in. I tell these young guys all the time, right now is a great time to be in the business because there's a lot of people, a lot of places you can go to work and make money and make a living and not have, and do this as your sole job, which I think should be everybody's goal. You got TNA, you got ROH. I know is owned by AEW, but it's another brand that's paying guys to come wrestle for them. Japan, New Japan. I know Noah's not what it used to be, but it's still there. All Japan's still there. You can go to Japan, make money. So yeah, I think it's a good time to be in the business.
Yeah, of course. And like you mentioned with Ring of Honor, Ring of Honor brings a lot of like the indie talent on. So
Yes.
that's definitely something that's really nice to see.
Yes. Yes, it's stepping stones, and there needs to be companies like that are not on the I don't want to say the same level. They're not on the same production level as WWE or even AEW. In a perfect world, they're stepping stones. You start just like I did. I started at flea market. I started in high school gyms, and I worked my way up to a small TV. Then I worked my way up to a bigger TV. And eventually, and in each step, I was learning and getting better, preparing me for the next step. You need places like ROH and TNA where guys can go and make a living so that they can apply their trade. Where you're not having to. This business is easy when you're making $1 million a year and your sole focus is on training, working out, nutrition, all that stuff. Tanning bed, you have a whole day, or even if you're traveling. Yeah, I know the schedules, but with that, when you're making that kind of money, you can afford to find a gym, you can do all that stuff. The real heroes are the guys that have to work a 9 to 5 job. They're working out there in the construction in the heat all day. They're doing stuff like that. And then jumping in their car and hauling ass, you know, an hour or 2 hours, 3 or 4, whatever down the road to do a wrestling match just to come home and get up and have to do the same thing the next morning. Those are the guys that are really digging. But you need places where those guys can go and finally, maybe not, they're not getting rich, but they're able to pay the bills and they can focus solely on their trade, on their bodies, on their nutrition, on that kind of stuff. You need those kind of places.
Of course, yeah. So I know you now work as a sheriff. What made you decide to become a sheriff after wrestling and do what you do now?
Uh, I need an adrenaline rush, and that I got from wrestling. And I don't know. I had a roommate in college, Ken Walton. Me and him were roommates, and we always talked about how cool it would be to be a sheriff's deputy, that kind of thing. And then I just I when I started seeing, I saw the kind of the end coming, or what I wanted to be the end coming, and I had a lot of friends from around here that were in law enforcement, and I knew, so it just seemed kind of a natural thing. I guess every kid, when back when I was a kid, you watch the police shows. Everybody wanted to be a cop or a fireman, so I just it was kind of a natural fit for me.
Yeah. Do you think you like that better than wrestling now?
You kind of put me on the spot with that. I am very happily employed at the sheriff's department, but there's nothing that'll ever take the place of wrestling. And all my friends there and my bosses, they know that. Um, Nothing will ever take the place of wrestling. That's I wanted to do it since I was a little kid. Everything from about, I would say, probably 9 or 10 years old. Everything I did in life had some kind of purpose of getting me toward wrestling. Uh, Even playing basketball. When I was playing basketball, I was thinking, well, I'm just making myself a better athlete so I can be a better wrestler when I get a chance. Going to the gym, it was all toward being a pro wrestler someday. So I just set my mind to it, and I never took no for an answer.
Of course, yeah. So, what was your whole reaction to the moment you found out Brooks got signed to the WWE? And when did you find out that when he got signed?
Well, he had been working. He started actually. He started working as a referee when he was 14. I think he had his first match when he was I think he was 16. but understand, he was already 6'4", 6'5", 240. I mean, he was almost a grown man already at 15. So he'd been working a while, but when he got done with of course, he was playing football, and he was, like I said, he was a good amateur wrestler. So he finished his state tournament. He won state championship, and I think 3 weeks after that, they had a seminar that William Regal Evolve came to Atlanta. Gabe Skopolsky, and I knew Gabe, but Ben wanted to go to that seminar because William Regal was going to be there, and so he had a job at a little feed mill down here, and he saved his money. He went and did the seminar, and while he was there, they were doing matches. They all paired up to do matches, and of course, I knew William Regal from WWE. We had a good relationship, so he came over and sat down, and we were just talking. We hadn't seen each other in a while, and I told him that. He kind of asked me, "Well, what's your plan for him?" Because I think he'd already looked at him and kind of liked him. Asked me what my plan was for him, and I said, "Well, really, I would like for him to have a couple of years experience. I'd really love to get him over to Japan to the dojo, kind of what he did with with his son. Get him over to the dojo and let him work over there, for 3, 4, 6 months, whatever. Get that experience, and then come to you guys." But it was right at the time that COVID hit. It was 2019, and COVID came out, and everything shut down. So, for a good part of the year there, he was just training. But then Regal called me up and said, "Hey, we're having a tryout down here. We'd love to have him come down and, see what he can do." So he went down, and he found out that he was getting a phone call, and usually the phone call was either to tell you got it or you didn't. So I actually told him to, he got the phone call, and I actually told him, I said, "Well, put it on speaker where I can hear it." So I sat there and listened, but they just told him that they were going to bring him down, and they were excited to have him and everything. So yeah, so I was thrilled, of course. It was a big moment for all of us, I guess.
Yeah, there's a lot of wrestlers now stepping into wrestling from like second generation, so it's great to see.
Yeah.
What about the storyline that's going on with him and Josh Briggs? What are your thoughts about that storyline that's going on?
Oh, I think it's a good storyline. Him and Josh, they meshed together pretty good, I think. They split them up, but I told him, now that y'all have been a tag team, you'll always have that you can go back to, at a later time. I always think it's cool when guys get to, kind of like Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens, that stuff. I always think it's those rivalries or those partnerships that pop up later on in your careers, when it means something. So, I think they'll all, and Fallon too, with them. I know they all want to have single careers, and I hope they do. And I feel certain that they all will. They're all talented. Josh is a good big man. I watched him. Well, Ben and myself actually watched him, but I watched him in Evolve, and I was really impressed with him in Evolve. And then of course Fallon, she's great, and then she's over with the crowd too. So I think they all have good singles careers, but yeah, I think, if they all run long enough, hopefully at some point they'll all come back together up there and continue the storyline, that started in NXT. I think those things are really cool when they happen.
Yeah, I agree. I think that would be great. So I know you recently just started your wrestling school. So what and when did you decide to make and start a training in wrestling?
Um, I had been wanting to get us to go going for a little while because, like I said, I like to coach. Uh, and I was approached by a guy here in town. I knew somewhat, but I didn't know, of course, as well as I do now, named Tom Artequazo. He owns a WGTV. It's a sports channel that produces all the high school sports in this area in West Georgia. He does football, basketball, and he's a huge wrestling fan. And he called me and asked me if I, wanted to do some wrestling, and so I said sure. So we started Bullpen Pro Wrestling. We got our first show on June 8th, and we got the school going also. It's Bullpen Pro Wrestling. We got a Facebook page. We're just kind of getting started. Like I said, our first show's on June 8th, but we got a good card. We got Michael Judas coming down. He's taking on a guy, uh, uh, Drago, Ukrainian guy, and man, I mean, he's 6'5", just chiseled out stone. David Young, Adam Jacobs are on the card. Got a good card, and ringside seats are already sold out, so we're looking pretty good. Looking forward to it, but we're gonna run. Regularly down there. So yeah, it's something I've always wanted to do. So I'm glad I'm finally getting to do it.
Yeah, of course. I'm glad to see that you're running a training school now. It's pretty cool. So,
Yeah.
have you ever wrestled or done anything in Wisconsin before?
Oh yeah. Green Bay. We used to go up to Green Bay all the time. We went up one time. Me and Godfather and Teddy Long were riding together, like I said, and I think this was after the famous where they left Teddy on the side of the road uh, incident. But we were going up there, and it was a blizzard. I'm from Georgia, so a blizzard in my mind is 4 or 5 flakes. But seriously, I mean, it was really coming down. Even the people. That's why I was always amazed with, being from Georgia, you don't get much snow, and when it does snow, people lose their minds in automobiles. They don't know what to do or how to act. And going up north and seeing that amount of snow and people just drive like it's no big deal was,
Yeah.
always kind of struck me as funny. But even the people from, Wisconsin were kind of pulling over. But I think we were going to Green Bay that night, I think. And yeah, it was coming to blizzard that night. But yeah, we used to wrestle up there all the time. Always good crowds, especially in Green Bay. They were always loud. They were loud and proud there. And it was so cool, especially to go up there and see Lambeau Field.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I live 45 minutes away from Green Bay. So uh, every time there's a show in Green Bay, a WWE event, I go and I watch. And yeah, I'm basically guessing back then it was at the Rush Center. So yeah, the Rush Center wasn't that far from the Lambeau Field. So yeah.
Yeah. I think the last time I was up there, um, I think they were in the last time I was up there that for the TV, they were in they might have been in I think they were building a building next to Lambeau. I think they were building a new place. We wasn't in it that time. But yeah, I think they were building a new place right there next to Lambeau Field, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I'm not really familiar with that, but yeah.
It might have been something else. But yeah, we always enjoyed going up there. Al
Yeah.
Snow and Steve Blackman were always huge up there because of head cheese, of course.
Oh yeah, Al Snow is like I think he lives in Wisconsin now.
Yeah.
Yep. So how did it feel for you to be part of like the 2001 WWE Royal Rumble, which had Drew Carey in it? If you were in the ring with him, what was that like?
Oh, it was cool. Yeah, I mean, Royal Rumble is always such a uh, I don't know. It's to me, it's always it can always has the potential to turn into a dumpster fire anytime you have that many guys in the ring. But WWE always does such a good job of the way that they, the story that's told inside the ring. But yeah, it was a good build up to the Royal Rumble, I thought. And of course, that's the springboard to WrestleMania. So
Yep.
yeah, the the match always means something because whoever's going over, of course, gets the title shot. So, like I said, I mean, it's setting up the road to WrestleMania. It starts in January, and from there on up, it's just a bigger and bigger build every pay per, or I guess now every whatever they call them now, but the pay per views back then.
Yep. Yeah, they still call them pay-per-views to this day. So, what feelings and emotions were you and Godfather going through on 6/11 in 2000 when you both won the WWF Tag Team titles against the Hardy Boys?
Oh, I was ecstatic. I mean, for a lot of my career, I was a tag team wrestler. So I guess if you want to say a tag team specialist, I mean, the tag teams were kind of my thing. But to be the best, I mean, to be the on top of what you do, I mean, and especially at that time, you look at the tag teams we had. I mean, we beat the Hardys, Edge and Adam and Jay, and the Dudleys, Too Cool. Like I said, even Blackman and I mean, the tag team division was just the Acolytes. It was just off the chain at the time. You had some of the greatest tag teams of all time during that time. So to actually have the belts and be on top of that for a while was I was ecstatic. I don't know that the Godfather was quite as ecstatic as I was, but I know that he was. I know that he appreciated them putting the belts on us. It's an honor, no matter how you slice it up or at what time or place you are in this business. It's an honor, when they bestow that on you. So I think it was more that he was just it's not a secret he didn't like the RTC, and who can blame him? I mean, I was just watching a video earlier of him coming out and the crowd reaction and pop. I mean, who would want to go from that to being a jerk? Not to mention the money that he lost on merchandise. I mean, he was one of probably the top 5 sellers of merchandise in the company, if not one of the top 3 at that time. And he went from that to 0. So, I think maybe giving the tag belts to us was a little bit of a kind of a pat on the back or attaboy for doing for him anyway. But yeah, no, we were happy about it. We were glad. Anytime you have the belts, you're working higher up on the card, you're making more money.
Yep. I mean, you guys did have like a short run with the titles. I think you guys could have had like a long run. Do you think you guys could have had like a longer run with the titles?
Oh, I mean, we could have, of course. But it's just whoever they, wherever the storyline's going, whoever they need to be on at that time. Yeah, we could. I think we could have had a little more run with the RTC than what we did. But if you look at the time frame, we just bought WCW, so all the storylines were changing, and in Austin it just turned heel, and everything was kind of flip flopping at the time. So we I think we could have ran a little longer with it, but I thought we had a good run there for a little bit.
Yeah, of course. I mean, you guys won the titles, so I mean that's basically all that matters. I mean, that was awesome. So,
yeah.
is there any time a fan has seen you in public and got like super surprised and or excited?
Oh yeah. I mean, and like there again, not trying to put myself over. But at that time, we were all rock stars. If you were on Vince's TV at that time, and I mean from the top of the card, from Rocky all the way down to the, whoever the lowest guy on the card was, you were a rock star. I mean, you were on MTV, you were on, everything. So, yeah, that was a lot. But it was always funny. I would meet people, at places like Walmart or the shop, and they would say, oh, what are you doing around? People that didn't know that I was from there. they would say, "Oh, we wouldn't expect to see you here. We figured you'd lived out in L.A." And I said, "No, I'm from here. I've lived here my whole life." People think that if you're on TV a little bit, you're from L.A. or New York or something. I said, "No, I live in Bowden, Georgia." So I was always,
Yeah.
but it was hard it was hard to go out at that time. And like I said, it was like that for everybody. It wasn't, it wasn't just the top guys. It was hard to go out in public sometimes. I mean, you didn't want to disguise yourself, but you put on a baseball hat and some sunglasses, and not because you want to avoid. I mean, I always love interacting with fans because that's who pays our bills. But at the same time, you do want just a little bit of time to yourself. So, I can't say I ain't put on sunglasses and a ball cap going to Walmart before, but yeah, the fans, that's who pays the bills. So, I've never shied away from, letting them be a part of, your life, especially the we're back. Hello.
Hey. Yeah, you
Hey.
disappeared again.
Okay. Yeah. No, I mean, it's, as you never get too big for the people around your hometown, I think. So I always, I was always just Barry Buchanan to everybody around here, which it's funny because now I don't think anybody ever calls me Barry anymore. Everybody just calls me Bull.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and I'm guessing definitely after like all the shows when you went out to eat, there was a lot of people that probably seen like a table of wrestlers and probably went over there, I'm guessing.
yeah, yeah. But you always try to be nice to them because they're fans. They're excited to see you.
Yeah. Don't start swinging.
Yeah. No.
If a movie was made about your career, who would you want to play you?
Oh, God, I don't know. Uh, I don't know that the size. I don't know that it would. The size would translate, but if you're gonna find somebody, find the best. Some Tom Cruise. I get Tom Cruise to play me. I know that's a stretch, but
Yeah,
and as good an actor as he is, I think he could probably figure out a way to do it and make people believe it. Uh, that guy's amazing to me. I went in 1987. I went and saw Top Gun when it came out, and I waited, how many years? 33 years, and it finally came out again. And I was just as happy with the movie as I was the first one. Uh, that he can play anything. I mean, he can play anything or anybody.
of course. Yeah. I just what came to my mind. I thought of Nathan Jones. The rest because I know he does act now. He
Oh
came
yeah,
to
and
my
the big
mind.
Nathan. I was actually
Yeah.
there when he first came in. That guy, God, man, he was huge. I mean, I was a big guy, but that dude was. I mean, he was unbelievable. I remember meeting him, and he came up like real fast toward me, and I was like, "Oh God, what have I done?" And he stuck his hand out, and I had met John Heidenreich, and we had tagged a little down in OVW before he came up. And him and Nathan were friends, I guess. And so he ran up to me and says, "Oh, Heidenreich says you're a great guy, And yeah, he was huge, man. I was really really disappointed when he didn't hang around. God, man, there was no ceiling to what that guy could have done. Uh, I didn't get to see him work. He didn't really work enough for any of us to get to really see it. But just the character, and I know that I know that Taker was working with him and trying to help him, and I was really expecting big things from him. But then hell, he pops up in oh god, what was it? Achilles movie, the Trojan Horse. I can't remember. I love the movie. Um, Troy. He starts popping up and stuff like that. So I guess he did okay for himself anyway.
Yeah. I was also thinking that you two could possibly even have been in like a tag team, even like something of the sorts. You two had like the same height, kind of like both muscular. So yeah,
Oh, don't you know? I didn't think about it while he was standing there pumping my hand. I was thinking to myself, God, I need him as a tag team partner, because I was kind of floating around. At the time, I was on the road and doing TVs, but I was doing dark matches at TVs, but I was on all house shows. And I'll tell you another guy that really, I would really like to have tagged with him. I thought it would have been very unique. Was a guy named Horseshoe Harry. I don't know how, if a lot of people remember him. He was just there for a minute, but Horseshoe Harry in WCW. I saw him the first time. And it's weird when it was weird feeling when you see somebody that looks a lot like you do. For me, it was because I saw him and I was like, God, he does. Because somebody had told me, he said, man, that dude looks like you. And even my wife said, God, he looks like you. And we were sitting we were somewhere at SmackDown. I was, like I said, I was on the road. I was doing darks and I was doing the house shows. I can't remember if it was Arn Anderson or if it was Pat Patterson or if it was both. I think maybe they were both standing there. Oh, no, I think it was Arn. And then I think Pat kind of like, oh, yeah. Arn said, who would be a great tag team partner for you is Horseshoe. And I think they called him maybe something different in WWE. But he had been Horseshoe Harry in WCW. He said, you guys could pass as brothers. And I thought to myself, he's absolutely right. Because we could have at that time. But yeah, I never got the chance. So, but
yeah. I was confused on who it was for a second when you said Horseshoe Harry, but I looked him up. Yeah, he went under the name Luther Rangs, and I was like,
yes,
okay,
Luther Reigns.
yeah,
Yes, Luther Reigns. Yes, yes,
yeah,
yes. Yes, he had the
yeah,
haircut. He had the horseshoe gimmick in WCW. Yes, Luther Reigns.
yeah. Yeah, I just seen a post about him a little earlier today. Like somebody posted him as the horseshoe
Yeah,
persona. So,
yeah.
which wrestler has given you the best like advice and or compliment?
Uh, Guy named Mike Jackson. Anybody watches TNA, I know Mike Jackson. He's like 70 years old and still out there walking top rope.
Yeah,
Mike Jackson told me when I first started, he said, when you start looking at this as a business, you'll start making money. And he was right, and I did, I started looking at it as a business more, as hard as it was for me, because we all love this. We've all done it for free. I have. Uh, when you look at it as a business, I'm driving X amount of miles for this amount of money. Am I covering my gas? Am I covering my food? Am I making money at this? When you start looking at it like that, you'll start making more money. And, that was a great piece. Tommy Rich told me one time, I asked him if he did a lot of planning about his matches or thinking about what he wanted to do. And he said, no, because you never know what they're buying when you get out there. You never know what they're biting on. You never know what one crowd's going to want as opposed to another crowd and what they want. You have to, in other words, you have to be able to do stuff on the fly. You have to be spontaneous. You have to be able to change course midstream, at a drop of a hat. So, yeah, those were a couple of good pieces of advice, that always stuck in my head.
yep, yeah. Mike Jackson is awesome. I had him on here on my for an interview one like a while back. He's a great guy. So
Yeah, he is.
yeah,
He is, and I made a lot of money as far as indie wrestling. I made a lot of money working for Mike Jackson with just the advice that that he gave me.
Yeah. Yeah, he gave me some advice to become a wrestler too, so it was awesome, and just to see that he still wrestles as his age still this day and
Yes,
walks the top rope is incredible.
yes, yeah. I saw him the other night in Rome, Georgia. Same old Mike Jackson.
Yep. And he still gets booked by like the big companies.
Yep.
It's yeah. What would you, what would you do if a crowd member came out of the crowd and attacked you, or has that ever happened, or have you personally witnessed that happening before?
Oh, it's happened a lot. It happened on Monday Night Raw. We were in, I won't say we were in the Georgia Dome cutting a promo as RTC. The guy hit the ring and Godfather kicked him in the head right back through the ropes. Um, when I was working Smoky Mountain for Cornette, we were part of Cornette's army. It was me, Tommy Rich. Originally, it was Buddy Landell, and it was Terry Gordy. And Buddy had turned babyface, and he was turning babyface, and we hadn't turned on him yet. And we were somewhere in Kentucky at a big high school gym with a big crowd. And we finally turned on him. We laid him out, and he was bleeding and bloody, and we were just laying the wood to him. And when we got out of the ring, one of the few times Jim Cornette's ever got mad at me, we started going down the aisle, and I looked, and I said, Jimmy, I was trying to get his attention because I was walking, because when you're Jimmy Cornette's bodyguard, you're a true bodyguard because he had so much heat wherever he went that, you always had to be watching for somebody to jump him.
Yeah.
Ray Traylor punched a guy out, wound up having to, I think wound up having to pay like $8,000 to the guy because he, uh, turned his jaw around on the other side of his head, but he was trying to get to Cornette, and, Ray took him out. So I was always right next to Cornette, and, Tommy and Terry were behind me. And I said, Jimmy, we're going the wrong way. And he said, I know which way we're going. So I said, okay, no problem. So we walked right into a wall. We were supposed to go to the other side where the dressing room was at. This was just a solid brick wall. So now all those people had gathered up behind us, and we had to go back through them. But, I turned around, Terry Gordy was there, and said, anybody knows Terry, how he taught, he said, come on, boy, let's go. And one guy jumped out in front of him, and he sent him soaring, about 4 or 5 rows back, and we all our way back through it, back to the dressing room, but I've been on the other side of that too, guys, people jump in and try to help me, and, I'm trying to tell, hey, I got it. It's okay. I got it.
Yeah.
It's a funny story. My retirement show, me and D'Lo Brown tagged against a guy named Brad Lynch and another guy named AJ Steele. I had worked with both of them, both good workers and great guys, and I'd worked with them a lot, and that's who I wanted to work with on my final match. And me and D'Lo tagged against them, and at some point I went flying out of the ring over the corner rope, crash landed, thought I'd killed myself. The fire department came down there and was trying to help me up. And Brad Lynch was up there in the ring running his mouth, and a guy stood up in the third, fourth row and pulled his knife out. And I had my retirement match after I'd been at the sheriff's department for about a year, and I just gotten on the road. So all my sheriff's department buddies were there, and 3 or 4 of them happened to be sitting next to him. I had to get up and get him calmed down and sit back down and put his knife up. But he was going to jump in and help me, with Brad Lynch. But yeah, I've been on both sides of it. It's kind of part of it. It makes you feel good when you know that you've invoked that much of a reaction either way, either good or bad. If you made them so mad that they want to jump you in the ring, you've done your job. And if they love you enough to come in there and help you in spite of 3 or 4 guys bigger than they are, then you've done your job. So.
Yep. And it's funny that out of everyone there, it was the guy that was sitting right next
Right.
to your
Yeah.
police
Yeah.
buddies.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would you rather join DX, NWO, APA, or BWO?
Career wise, I guess if I had to go back and I was presented with that choice, I guess it would either have to be NWO or DX, probably DX, because that was my company. Uh, Looking back on it for just shits and giggles, it would definitely be the BWO. Like I said, me
Yeah,
and Stevie got to be friends, and then I got to meet Meanie and Nova, like those guys, all those guys later on. But that shit was so funny. It was hilarious even back then. Still hilarious now. I went me we were looking through YouTube stuff, and we were watching some old BWO stuff.
happened again.
Oh, yeah, like I said, I guess career wise, it would either be NWO or DX, probably DX, since those were my guys. But like I said, just for fun, just for fun stuff, BWO. Those guys
Yep.
were hilarious. Yeah.
Yeah. What funny name would you see yourself under the BWO if you had to choose a different name?
Oh God, I don't know. Probably, when Stevie did it in ECW and he came out with the bald wig on as Baron. I guess I could be Baron von Raschke since I got the bald head. I guess I could do the claw and be Baron von Raschke for him.
Yes, that would be great.
Another guy I watched when I was in Georgia, and I thought was, at the time being a little kid, was almost scared of him. But now going back and looking, he was so animated and so he, you have to be over the top to draw people in. People usually don't get with dull, boring characters, especially back then. You had to kind of be over the top to pull people in. But yeah, I guess I could be the Baron for them.
Yeah. If you could have any band or singer perform your theme song, who would you want that to be?
Ted Nugent, Stranglehold. Greatest wrestling hold in the history of greatest wrestling song in the history of wrestling, Stranglehold. What better wrestling song, Yeah. I'd have Uncle Ted out there shredding the electric guitar.
Yeah, that'd be great.
That, or I guess, of course, Leonard Skinner, Freebird, But
Mm.
that's almost sacrilegious to play Freebird unless you're one of the actual Freebirds. So, yeah, I guess probably Stranglehold.
Yeah. What is some of your favorite music and genres and singers and songwriters to listen to in your spare time?
Uh, Huge Southern rock fan. I've always been a Southern rock fan. I like a lot of different music, country, rock and roll, rap. I was really into rap back during when it first started. I was a teenager growing up, so I listened to Run DMC, Grandmaster Flash, those guys. Like I said, huge Southern rock fan. Uh, Leonard Skinner, all the Southern rock guys. Um, I was like I said, a teenager in the '80s, so of course my hair band guy, Guns N' Roses, Poison, Bon Jovi, all those guys. But yeah, I listened to a little bit of everything. I even like bluegrass. I listened to that. Um, just listened to a little bit of everything, I guess.
Yeah, my favorite band is the band Kiss.
Oh, huge Kiss fan. I've seen them retire about 3 or 4 times. I've been to their final concert 3 or 4 different times. I was there for the first one in '97. I think it was the first retirement tour, or '96 in the Omni. I was there for that. So yeah, I've supported them in all their retirements.
Yeah, it's been like my dream to see them in concert, and I actually got to see them in concert September 1st of 2023 here in Crandon, Wisconsin. They were performing for their final tour, and this was kind of like for like a Potawatomi um, kind of tribe thing.
Yeah.
So they had it, and yeah, it was amazing. I loved it. So I finally got
Oh yeah,
to go to.
they're worth the price of admission. Absolutely. Yeah, one of my favorite bands of all time, Kiss.
Yep.
And I didn't know it at the time. I found out later. I always thought that the Punisher, the gimmick name, came from the movie, but actually, I found out later from Jim Cornette that the name actually came from Gene Simmons' bass guitar, which was named the Punisher. So, and that's what I came out to. I came out to God of Thunder, uh, but that was all. Cornette was a Kiss fan too. So that was my theme music. But that was also where the Punisher name came from. Was actually from Gene Simmons' bass guitar, the Punisher.
Oh wow,
Yeah,
wow,
yeah. Little inside scoop there.
that's awesome. And then there's also
Useless trivia.
BWO.
Yeah. A little
Yeah.
useless trivia there.
Well, no, that was really interesting. I like that. So, but then there was also the BWO. And Blue Meanie was a like a huge fan of Kiss. Is still
Oh
is.
yeah,
They had
yeah,
dressed up as Kiss and did
yes,
some stuff.
yeah.
So yeah. So what usually got you hyped for a match that you were going to be in, and just yeah.
Uh, I didn't really. I didn't really listen to music, to get backstage. I just listened to the crowd. I usually listen to the crowd in the match before. I let the crowd, kind of kind of get up with them. So it's usually just listening to the show, listening to the ebb and flow of the show, and especially if the match before is going really good and they're really into it, that gets me more hyped up.
Yep. And to circle around to the previous question, I forgot to mention something about the Demon Dale Torberg. Um,
Yeah.
when he had Kiss actually perform at WCW, I don't know if you were there at that time.
No, I was into WWE, but yeah, I remember that. I thought it was cool, really cool. I thought what a great gimmick, to be able to basically be Gene Simmons. I thought what a lucky guy, I don't know how well it worked out for him, but I always thought it was a good spin off of Gene.
Yep, definitely. So, what has been your most favorite venue you have got to wrestle at in your career?
Oh, Madison Square Garden, without a doubt, Madison Square Garden. There's nowhere like it. I don't care. They can
Yeah.
build new. They can build new. They can build 500,000 seat stadiums. You know, that fly through there, and they'll never be anywhere like Madison Square Garden. And it's old. It's not a new venue. It's old. It's probably outdated, but just the history in that place and everything. There in the Budokan in Tokyo, Japan, same deal. It's an old building. But God, the matches that took place there, not even just the matches, the concerts, the all the other stuff. Madison Square Garden. When you walk down the halls, there's pictures of Hogan and Mr. T, of Piper, but there's also pictures of James Taylor. Kiss. Uh, the Knicks playing. All the Muhammad Ali boxing, all the great sporting events that have been through there. There's pictures on the wall when you walk down through there. There's nothing like it.
Yeah, I would probably say the Madison Square Garden is like one of the biggest and best sports auditoriums out there. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, like venues, not
Yeah,
just for sports, but yeah, venue.
yeah,
Yeah. So like in Kiss performed like their final concert there too. So
yeah.
has there been any time you've accidentally broken out of your wrestling persona?
No, because um, I've always just made my wrestling persona me. It's always made an extension of me. So, I mean, no, there's never been times when I was supposed to be mad at somebody that I busted out laughing. No, but you know, you make it so much easier when it's just an extension of yourself, because then you're not acting, you're not really in a persona, you're just being you. So, for example, if some guy has got on my last nerve, I don't have to pretend to be Bull Buchanan. I'm just being myself. I'm just let my emotions go as they normally would. Uh, I think if you're acting, this business is not about acting; it's about reacting. Uh, and that's why the people that usually get over the most are the ones who are actually, they're not playing a persona. They are that persona. That's them. Austin, Rocky, Taker, all of that's really them. Mark Calloway really
Yep.
rides motorcycles. Uh, Steve Austin really drinks beer. He's really a redneck from Texas. He tells everybody that. You know, Eh, when it's just an extension of yourself. Um, but yeah,
Yep. Do you feel like you are worthy enough to be part of like the WWE Hall of Fame as like singles or even like the tag team factions worthy? And who do you think would induct you singly?
I don't know. I have never put myself, up there in that, spot like that. But who would induct me? I'm guessing, my sons or my family probably. I don't know. If not, maybe Jim Cornette. Um, but yeah, I've never really thought of myself as being there. Now, as far as like a group, maybe in the RTC or something. I don't know, because now looking back on it, it does seem like we kind of won the PG war. After all, we really wasn't trying to, but we actually did. So I don't know if somebody's warped sense of humor, they might someday say, "Hey, we ought to." Those guys were the catalyst for everything that went downhill with the WWE. So maybe we ought to put them in the Hall of Fame. I don't know. Yeah, I'm, being funny there, but yeah, no, I've never really thought of myself in that light.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like you're worthy enough to be part of the WWE Hall of Fame. So,
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
who are five wrestlers tag teams you would put into the WWE Hall of Fame that are not in there yet that you know of that aren't in there?
Oh God, I don't know. Now I think Ron and John are in there, or I know Ron's in there, but as far as like putting them in as a tag team, definitely Ron and John. Those guys were so over back during our time. Everybody loved seeing APA. Uh, God, I don't know. That's pretty. I would love to see the Midnight Express go in. Absolutely
Oh
love to
yeah,
see the Midnight Express. I think they're more than deserving. Like JR always said, for every for every hero, there has to be a great antagonist. To the Rock and Roll Express, the Midnight Express was that antagonist. So definitely them. Um, Man, you stumped me on that one. I think that I know Sean is, of course, but uh, I don't know. Maybe Marty and Sean, uh, they were a very influential tag team, even though as young as they were at the time. They made a real mark in the business. Um, maybe it's somebody like the Samoan, not the I know often Seeker in there, but maybe like the Samoan SWAT team or Samu, those some of those guys. But yeah, maybe some of those guys that I mentioned.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. But someone that I would like definitely to see that I think is like way overdue is like Cyndi Lauper. She,
Oh
I
yeah,
feel
yeah,
like definitely deserves a spot, like in like the celebrity wing, just or in
yeah,
like general. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Hmm. I mean, I could do like a whole list right now, but like,
Yeah, yeah.
what are four words you would describe your wrestling persona?
I don't know. Tough, determined. I mean, what I've tried to portray. Tough guy, determined. A little bit of a hothead. I guess something like that.
Yeah. If you are like upset or anxious during or before a match, what do you do to help yourself calm down?
I'll just breathe. That's usually the best advice anytime. Just take a breath, breathe. Try to relax a little bit. I heard somebody say one time they can't eat us, so you know, um, worst thing can happen. You go out there and bomb. You know, you wake up next morning, I
Yeah.
guess.
What would you say is one, like a number one top unforgettable moment of yours in your wrestling career that you like never ever forget?
Uh, Probably WrestleMania with Boss Man, doing that leg drop off the top, hearing the referee count three, hearing the crowd. That was just that's about as good as it gets.
Of course, yeah. If you could go back and revisit any year of your wrestling career, what year would that be and why?
2000. I was on. I mean, I was working at the top company in the business at the time. Working in major angles. With all the major players. So yeah, 2000.
Yeah, and that's also the year that you started uplifting your career to
Yeah.
bigger and better things too. So
Yep. Yeah.
if if you could go back in time and tell your younger self something motivational, also Brooks Jensen something motivational towards being a wrestler, what would that be?
You can't quit. You just gotta work harder than the next guy. It all boils down to how bad you want it. If you want it bad enough, there's no excuse out there. You can't get it if you work hard enough. Um, it's just it's nothing anybody doesn't know. It's just putting in the work. That's all it is.
Yeah, of course. What are some things you are that you never got to achieve in wrestling that you wish you could have or possibly could at some point?
I guess probably world champions and in a singles capacity. Um, I got to of course got to be the tag team champion in WWE, and I was also a tag team champion in All Japan, and then got to go over to Noah, and me and D'Lo held the GHC tag team titles for a little bit there. So probably a singles world championship. Probably that.
Yeah. If the Truth Commission and or the right to censor could entrance with any animal, what animal do you think would fit best as like your guys's animal?
The Truth Commission, probably something from South Africa, probably a tiger or something. Maybe we could ride in on an elephant. I don't know.
Yeah. What is your favorite wrestling quote?
Oh, God, I don't know. You stumped me. Um, I don't know. It'll probably be something from Michael Hayes promo. Um, Michael Hayes was doing an interview with Bill Mercer in World Class, and Bill Mercer asked something about where Buddy had been. And Michael Hayes turns to him and asks him, "What are you, the cops?" that for however many years since it happened, 40 years, that has just tore me up every time I saw it. Just the ad lib, just the quickness of Michael Hayes come off the top of his head for that. I always
Yeah.
thought that was hilarious. Yeah, you might want to say go look it up. I can't remember it, but it was the interview with the Freebirds and Bill Mercer. And yeah, Michael Hayes was just so quick to come up with those one-liners and stuff.
Yep.
Hey, man, I'm gonna have to wrap this up. I gotta get on that phone call.
Yeah, of course. So is there any uh I'll ask you one last question if that's fine with
Yeah,
you.
that's fine. That's fine.
So would you have advice for me to become a wrestler?
Um, Guys today are very lucky. I think. I didn't really have you cop a VHS tape back then, but there's so many outlets to watch it. So the more you watch it, the more you know. The more you know, the better you can apply it. I think. The business is so much more open nowadays than it used to be. So it's a lot easier to find out information about it. But watching the matches, because it doesn't cost anything, and you don't have to have a ring, you don't have to have anything. Actually, just a chair or hell, even a piece of floor to sit there, and watch Tiger Mask and Dynamite Kid. Watch Masawa and Kobashi, or watch Sting and Flair, or Steamboat and Flair. Sit there and watch those matches and watch how they did it, and and watch and learn, and how the flow of the match and the psychology of the match. Anybody, most people can learn the moves. You can teach most anybody the moves, but to actually understand why you're doing them and when to do them, and how you do them, that's the hard part. And there's so much that guys can learn just from just like a high school football team watching a highlight or watching the team they're playing next, watching the old tapes, watching the formations they run, all that. It's the same with wrestling. You just sit and learn, watch and learn. And, when you go to shows, stay to the end, don't leave early. Watch all the matches. You're constantly learning.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And I thank you so much for taking your time out to do this part two of the interview. Is there something
Y'all,
that
no
you would
problem,
like to
man. No
tell your
problem.
fans one last?
Just thanks for supporting me. Whether you booed me or cheered me, hopefully I don't know, you know, I had a little bit of talent, but I had a whole lot of and a little bit of athletic ability, but I had a whole lot of no quit. So just if you saw me, if you paid money to see me, I know that I gave 100% that night.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks again. I hope you have a good rest of your night.
Yeah, buddy, no problem. I enjoyed it.
Yep. All right. Thank you.
All right. See you, bud. See you, man.
Yep. See you.
Okay.